The Last Shadow, Chapter 1. Seattle in winter was wet and gray. The water of Lake Sammamish lay flat as a mirror, but it was not peaceful. The fog clung low, heavy on the trees and the roofs of the houses by the shore. People went about their mornings with umbrellas and coffee cups. They did not know that death was watching them. He was there, a man who looked ordinary. Dark hair, clean clothes, a smile that seemed to hold trust. He carried an arm in a swing. He walked carefully, with a kind of hesitation that invited help. He waited and he watched. She came to the lake that morning. She was young and restless, with the bright light of summer in her even on a gray day. She carried her towel and her book. She had a plan for nothing more than a swim and some sun. She was the kind of girl who drew eyes, though she did not ask for them. The man spoke to her. He was soft and polite. He said his boat was nearby, that his arm made it hard to move it, and would she help him? She looked at him and saw no danger. She saw a man in need. She agreed. They walked together, past the parked cars, down the path that curved toward the water. The people on the lawn saw them. Some remembered later. At the time, it was nothing. The path bent into trees. The sound of the lake grew louder. His steps became sure. The sling was a trick. His body was strong. When they were alone, he moved quick and brutal. The quiet swallowed the sound of her fear. By noon, the place was still. The fog lifted a little. Families laid out picnics. Children splashed in the shallows. No one knew she was gone. Later, another girl came. She was bright, laughing, free. She met the man too. He had the same smile, the same soft story. He asked again for help with the boat. She too agreed. Two girls gone in one day. Two shadows swallowed by the water and the trees. The city did not know yet. The news had not come. Seattle was alive with the noise of cars and ferries and rain on glass. In the suburbs, men mowed lawns. In the markets, women carried bags of fruit. The world turned as always. But in the quiet places, on the edges of the lake, in the narrow spaces of his mind, the man was working. He had the rhythm of a hunter. He had patience and need. Night came down. Streetlights glowed on wet asphalt. Radios played soft songs. She was not home. They waited for her, called her name, checked the clock. The calls went unanswered. The worry spread slow, like water under a door. The next day, her picture was on the counter at the police desk. She was missing. The word carried a sharpness. It cut into the calm. Detectives began their walk through the facts. Who saw her last? Where she had gone? What she wore? Names written down, times marked, statements gathered. It was the beginning of the chase. The man watched, too. He read the papers. He heard the voices on the radio. His face showed nothing. He was still the friendly man, the law student, the neighbor. He sat in coffee shops. He held books in his hands. He smiled at girls who smiled back. But behind the smile was the hunger. It grew with each passing day. It whispered in his head when he tried to sleep. It pushed his hands to shake. He could not stop. He did not want to stop. In the city, fear was not yet heavy. People still walked the parks alone. They still left their doors unlocked. They still trusted the faces of men who looked clean and spoke well. The shadow was there, but not seen. Not yet. The girl's parents drove the streets. They looked for her car. They asked questions. Their voices carried the raw sound of hope that was already breaking. At night, they sat at the table with coffee gone cold. They did not say the word death. They said lost. They said maybe. The police widened their circle. They searched the lake. Boats with spotlights cut through the fog. Divers went down into the dark water. They found nothing, only silence below. The man was already gone. He had moved on, carrying his mask, carrying his hunger. The city would follow him soon, though it did not know it. Seattle's streets glistened in the rain. The ferries kept running. The markets opened at dawn. Life went on. But beneath it all, the shadow grew. It was patient. It was waiting. And in the homes of those who had lost, the nights stretched long. Every sound in the dark was her voice. Every car that slowed outside was her return. Every morning without her was another cut. The man slept and did not sleep. He thought of the lake, the screams, the silence after. He thought of the way the world kept turning as if nothing had happened. He thought of the next. He walked the campus again. He watched the women come and go. His smile was ready. His sling was ready. His lies were ready. It was only the beginning.
Chapter 2: The Mask of Normalcy. Seattle was a city of water and bridges. Ferries crossed the bay. Cars rolled over the floating roads. People walked in the rain with heads down. It was a good place for a man like him, a man who wanted to disappear in plain sight. He knew how to look safe. He was tall, with dark hair combed neat, a good jaw. His voice was soft. He had studied law. He read in libraries. He sat in class and spoke clear and calm. He learned how to act, and he acted well. At night, he planned. By day, he performed. He shook hands. He held babies at picnics. He laughed in groups. He carried books with notes in the margins. He had the look of a man with a future. People liked him. Women liked him. Men trusted him. He could talk about football. He could talk about politics. He could talk about school. He could listen. He could make you feel seen. This was his shield, his mask, the mask of normalcy. But under the mask was the same hunger, the same pull that had taken him to the lake, the same dark rhythm. It was always there. When he sat in class, when he ate a meal, when he shook a hand, the whisper never stopped. At night, he drove. He knew the roads along the lake. He knew the college paths. He watched girls walk home from the library. He learned their steps. He knew the places where light was thin, where trees cut the sky. He did not strike each night. He waited. He saved himself for the right time. But the watching was enough to keep the hunger alive. The police in Seattle worked. They took the missing reports. They made maps. They listed names. 2 gone from the lake in one day. Others missing from towns before. The pattern was faint, but it was there. A man, a stranger, a shadow. But who? They had no face, no name, only fragments.
A man in a sling. A man with a soft voice. A man with a smile. The city began to shift. Women walked in groups. Doors were locked. The word cereal was whispered now. It was new, it was ugly, it made the newspapers. Still he walked among them. He held doors for women who later feared the night. He bought coffee from the counters that displayed the papers with his crimes. He smiled at policemen who did not know who he was. The double life became its own thrill. To sit in a lecture and argue the law while knowing he had broken it beyond repair. To drink beer with friends and laugh while knowing he had taken 2 girls to their deaths. To smile at a girl who thought him kind while knowing he had already chosen her in his mind.
This was power. This was control. But it was also dangerous. Masks can slip. The more he played the part, the more he risked a crack. There were women who noticed the eyes behind the smile, the stillness in the hands, the way the words sometimes came too quick. They did not say it out loud, but they felt it. Some kept their distance, others did not. The police pushed harder. Detectives worked late. They pulled in witnesses. They asked again about the man at the lake. They wrote the word handsome in their notes. They wrote polite. They wrote injury. A sketch was made, a face in pencil. Not exact, but close. Close enough to make him uneasy. Close enough to remind him that the mask was not perfect. He saw the sketch in the paper. He stared at it. The eyes were almost his. The jaw was almost his. He felt the cold edge of fear, but it thrilled him too. The chase had begun. He drove more at night. He could not stop. He parked and watched. He leaned on the wheel and watched women cross the street. He counted the steps it would take to reach them. He planned in silence. The hunger burned. Seattle did not sleep well that summer. Fear was in the air like the damp. Parents called their daughters more often. Girls looked over their shoulders on the paths. Windows were locked that had never been locked before. Still, he waited. Still, he wore the mask. One evening, he sat with friends in a bar. The rain tapped the glass. The jukebox played soft. He laughed at a story told by another man. He held his beer in a steady hand. He looked like anyone else. But in his mind, he was not in the bar. He was in the woods by the lake. He was hearing the last breaths. He was feeling the silence after. The mask was perfect, but under it, the hunger grew louder. And soon, it would break through again.
Chapter 3. The next vanishing. The city carried on. Cars in the rain, students with backpacks, workers with coffee cups in hand. The news of missing girls had shaken people, but life pushed forward. It always does. He watched them move. He studied them. He saw how quickly fear fades when a few quiet weeks pass. People forget. They talk of other things. They laugh again at night. They walk alone again. He waited. The mask stayed in place. He studied. He worked. He played the part of a man with plans. The law books stacked by his bed, notes in margins, pages dog-eared. Professors spoke well of him. He nodded, smiled, answered questions in class. But inside, the pressure built. The hunger was not gone. It never left. It grew in silence. One night, he drove north. The rain came down soft, steady. Wipers slapped. Headlights carved a thin path through the dark. He He pulled off near a college campus. He knew the paths well. He had walked them before. He parked under trees. He watched from the car. A girl crossed the lot with books in her arms. He waited until she was gone. Another came. He studied her walk. He stayed still. He had time. Hours passed like this. He did not move. He watched and listened. The sound of shoes on wet pavement, the doors shutting in the distance, the faint hum of a late bus. He chose. She was young. She had long hair tied back. She wore a coat too thin for the cold. She held her books close. She walked fast, but not fast enough. He stepped from the car. He carried his prop, the plaster cast, his arm in a sling. He knew the part. He had practiced it. He called to her, a soft voice, polite, a man in need. Could she help him with his car? Just a moment, just a small kindness. She paused. People often paused. He looked safe. His face was calm, his eyes steady, his voice low. The mask did its work. She nodded once. She walked with him, the sound of her shoes close now. They reached the car. He opened the door with his good hand, set the books on the seat. He moved quick. The strike was clean, swift. The fear flashed in her eyes, but the fight was short. He was practiced now. He was calm. He was strong. The woods took her. He knew where to go. He had chosen the place earlier. Far enough, quiet enough. He carried her through the trees, the rain masking his steps. The earth was soft. The air smelled of pine and wet bark. There was no sound after. The city did not know yet. The lights still burned in windows. Students still studied late. Radio still played songs of love and loss. Life moved on, blind to what had happened. By morning, she was missing. By noon, her friends were worried. By night, the police were called. Another report, another map, another face on paper. The city's fear returned, stronger now. A pattern was seen. It could not be ignored. Girls vanishing, one after another, always young, always near schools or lakes. The police called in more men. They searched woods. They checked rivers. They spoke to students. They drew sketches again. Witnesses told of a man, always polite, always neat, sometimes with a sling, sometimes with a limp, always asking for help. The mask described in fragments. He read the papers. He watched the news. He listened to the words. He smiled at the sketches that almost looked like him. Almost, not quite. He liked the chase. He liked the closeness of it. To see his shadow in their words, but not his name. To walk past the officers who searched for him. To shake hands with men who carried his sketch in their pockets. The hunger and the thrill became one. And still, he could not stop.
Chapter 4. Fear Spreads in Seattle. The city woke restless. The news of another missing girl spread fast. Coffee shops buzzed. Newspapers sold quick. Radios carried her name, her face. Students whispered in hallways. Parents called their daughters twice, 3 times until they picked up. The police worked longer hours now. They held meetings. They pinned maps on walls. Strings ran from one point to another. Lakes, campuses, parking lots. The pattern grew clear. The faces of the missing girls stared back from photographs taped to corkboards. All young, all bright, all gone. The officers knocked on doors.
They asked the same questions. Did you see a man? What car? What color? They wrote down answers, drew sketches, pinned them next to the maps. The sketches were similar. A man with neat hair, a man with steady eyes, sometimes a sling, sometimes a limp, a mask of a gentleman, a wolf in clean clothes. People grew careful. Doors locked earlier. Girls walked in pairs. Pepper spray carried in purses. But still, some trusted. A face too ordinary. A voice too polite. He felt the city's fear. He fed on it. He watched the news at night. His eyes followed the maps on the television screen. He heard the words, serial predator. He heard the guesses, who, where, when, and he smiled.
Chapter 5. The Summer of Disappearances. The heat came with July. Dry skies, long evenings. Seattle turned outward. Parks filled with people. Lakes glittered with boats. Music floated from radios and beer cans hissed open. It was summer, and girls kept vanishing. A student left her shift at a mall bookstore. Her car was found in the lot, the door still locked. A waitress never came home from a late shift. A nurse's shoes were discovered near a footpath, one bent, one straight. Each time the city grew more afraid. Each time the police added another pin to the map, another face to the board. It was not random. The points on the map were close. The times matched. The man's charm matched. His calm voice, the sling, the limp, the polite smile. The sketches grew sharper now. Witnesses agreed on the eyes, brown, unblinking. A name slipped through more than once, Ted. Still, no one caught him. On July 14, Lake Sammamish filled with families. Children splashed in the shallows. Men carried coolers. Girls in swimsuits laughed on towels spread in the grass. It was a holiday crowd, loud and careless. He moved through it like smoke, calm, smiling, approachable, a sling on his arm. He asked for help. He said his name was Ted. He said he needed to load a sailboat. He said he could not lift alone. Some said no. They turned back to their blankets. But 2 girls said yes.
One by one, he led them to the lot. His car was waiting, a tan Volkswagen. Ordinary. Too ordinary. The first girl did not return. Hours later, neither did the second. By nightfall, their friends searched the grass, called their names, walked the shoreline. The police came again. They asked questions, wrote statements. For the first time, dozens of witnesses gave the same name, Ted. For the first time, dozens of people described the same car, the tan Volkswagen. The city's fear hardened into horror. At night, the police sat in conference rooms. Ashtrays filled, coffee went cold. They read the reports again and again. They drew more strings across the maps. It was a pattern now. It was a man now, a name, a car, a face. But he was still free. He drove with the windows down. The air was hot, the roads empty. He felt untouchable. The world around him soft, careless, blind. 2 families waited by the lake for daughters who would never come back, and he smiled in the dark.
Chapter 6. Closing in. The posters went up. Faces of the missing taped to windows, nailed to posts, tacked to bulletin boards in diners and laundromats. 2 young women, last seen at Lake Sammamish, both smiling in their photos, both gone. The newspapers called it bold, daylight bold, to take not one, but two, in front of hundreds, in a crowd, in the open air. The witnesses talked. They all remembered him. A man with a sling, polite, almost shy, asking for help. The name was the same, Ted. Again and again, Ted. And the car, a tan Volkswagen. The police had something now. A name, a car. It was not much, but it was more than before. They drew up lists. They asked around campuses. They sifted files. The name Ted was common, but a tan Volkswagen, that narrowed the field. One man's name surfaced. Theodore Bundy, a law student, clean record, smart, well-liked. His professors called him promising. His girlfriend called him kind. His co-workers called him dependable. But there was something else. He lived near the sites. He matched the descriptions. He had the car. Friends began to whisper. A coworker called in a tip. His girlfriend dialed the police one night and said she feared the man she loved. She gave them his name. She gave them his plate number. Still, the police hesitated. He was too normal, too clean, too polite. He did not look like the monster they pictured. He looked like one of them. Yet the evidence kept circling back. The same map, the same pins, the same car. Detectives followed him one night. He drove the Volkswagen across the city, aimless, restless. He stopped near a campus. He waited. They saw him. They wrote it down, but still they did not move. Not enough proof. Not yet. The girls kept vanishing. The pins on the map spread wider. Utah, Colorado, Idaho. States fell into the same pattern. Students gone, hitchhikers gone, faces vanished from their towns. The monster wore a clean shirt. He smiled in photographs. He spoke in careful words. And still the police wavered, papers piling higher on their desks. But the walls were tightening. Each call, each sighting, each sketch brought the net closer. He did not know it yet. He still believed in his luck. He still believed in his charm. At night, in the Volkswagen, he gripped the wheel. He looked out across empty streets. He thought of the girls who trusted him. He thought of the police who doubted. He thought of the next one. And he kept driving.
Chapter 7. The Arrest. The night was quiet in Salt Lake City. A patrolman sat in his car on a side street, watching. It was past midnight. The city had gone still. A tan Volkswagen moved through the dark. It slowed at corners, drifted past houses. The officer noticed. The car stopped, started, and stopped again. Too careful, too slow. He followed. The Volkswagen turned down another street. The officer saw no reason for the driver to be there. He hit the lights. The Volkswagen pulled over. The man behind the wheel smiled faintly. He was calm. His voice was steady. He handed over his license. Theodore Bundy. The officer asked where he was going. Bundy spoke of nothing much. Just a drive, he said. Could not sleep, needed air. The officer shined his light into the car. On the seat lay rope, a crowbar, a ski mask, handcuffs, a flashlight with no batteries, an ice pick. The officer knew. His chest tightened. He called it in. Backup came fast. They searched the car. Each item laid out on the hood in the glow of the street lamp: the rope, the mask, the cuffs, tools for binding, tools for silence. Bundy stood by the car, his hands behind him. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He watched, quiet, as if curious at his own capture. At the station, the detectives came. They spread the items on the table. They asked him why. Why the mask? Why the rope? Why the crowbar? He gave answers, calm and clever. The mask was for skiing, the rope for moving things, the crowbar for the car. Everything had a reason. He smiled as he explained, each lie neat, measured, believable enough to a stranger. But the detectives were not strangers. They had read the files. They had seen the sketches. They had listened to the frightened voices on the phones. They pressed harder. He shrugged, as if nothing touched him. He asked for a lawyer. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Outside the room, the officers talked. They had him, and yet they did not. The tools could be explained. The lies could be smoothed. The courts needed more. But the feeling was strong. This was their man. This was the Ted of the beach. This was the Ted of the witness calls. This was the face that fit. They held him on suspicion. They wrote the reports. They placed his name on file after file. Theodore Bundy. He sat in the cell waiting. He still believed in his charm. He still believed he would walk free. The mask of the student, the friend, the neighbor, it had not yet cracked. But the walls had shifted. The Volkswagen was gone from his hands. The rope, the mask, the cuffs, all locked away in evidence. His freedom was a thread now, fraying under his weight. Outside, the city slept. The papers had not yet printed his name. The families did not yet know him. But the circle had closed. The man who hunted women in the dark now sat in a cell of his own.
Chapter 8: Trials and Escapes. The courthouse in Utah was plain. White walls, worn benches, stale air. Reporters sat in the back with their notepads ready. The man they waited for walked in slow, chained at the wrists. Theodore Bundy. He looked neat, hair parted, suit pressed. He carried himself like he was still in class, still the student who smiled at professors. He nodded at the judge. He glanced at the jury as if he were one of them. The charges were simple at first: kidnapping, attempted assault. But the air in the room was heavy with things unspoken. The women gone, the bodies in the woods, the fear that had spread through towns. Everyone felt it. Bundy spoke smooth. He said he was innocent. He said he was being framed. He said the police twisted the story. He smiled when he said it. Some believed him. He had that way, words like honey, eyes that held steady. But the evidence sat on the table: the mask, the rope, the cuffs, each one real. The judge watched. The jury listened. The trial dragged on. Witnesses took the stand. The girl who had escaped told her story. She pointed at him across the room. He stared back without blinking. The verdict came: guilty. Bundy stood still, then nodded. His jaw tight, his hands pale. He said nothing. The sentence was years in prison, not yet death, not yet the full weight of his crimes. But the walls were closing, and then he slipped. He learned the hallways, the doors, the routines. He studied the guards. He lost weight,
dropped pounds until his body was thin, wiry. He found the ceiling loose above the light. One night he climbed. Hands raw, breath tight. He pulled himself into the crawl space. Dust thick, the dark close. He crawled through inch by inch until he found the other side. A guard's apartment, empty, a window, open air. By morning, he was gone. The papers screamed, "Bundy vanished!" Women locked their doors, checked the windows twice. Police searched roads, fields, motels. No sign.
Weeks later, they caught him again. A stolen car, a reckless drive, a patrol that recognized him. He came back in cuffs, thinner, sharper, eyes darker. Back to court. This time in Colorado. Charges stronger, witnesses louder, the press bigger. Cameras lined the steps, flashbulbs bright. Bundy liked it. He read about himself in the papers. He sent notes to admirers. He smiled in court as if it were a stage. And still he watched. The guards, the doors, the windows. He saw the cracks in the walls. At the county library, they let him read alone. Law books stacked in front of him, a pretense of study. He tested the window. It opened wide. One day, he moved quick. He set down the book. He walked to the window. He looked once at the floor below. 2 stories. He jumped. He hit hard, rolled, got up running. A suit torn at the knee, a sprain in his ankle, but he ran. He cut into the trees, down the hill, into the open. Gone again. For days he hid. He stole clothes, food, a car. He lived on the run. The country watched. His face on every TV, every headline. Yet he was always a step away. They caught him weeks later. Thin again, dirty, worn. He smiled when they put the cuffs back on, like a game he almost won. But the cracks had grown too wide. No jury would forget now. No judge would give him the benefit. He was a man who ran, twice. A man with no innocence left to claim. Still, he never stopped talking. He never stopped smiling. He thought the charm would save him. He thought the eyes of the world made him bigger. In truth, the walls had only grown taller. The stage was set for the final act.
Chapter 9. The End. Florida was hot, the air thick with salt, the streets loud with cars and radios. It was January. Bundy came south with nothing. He stole cars. He broke into houses. He drifted through bars, hiding in plain sight. His face was thinner, his eyes restless. The charm still there, but cracked. One night he found the Chi Omega House, a college sorority in Tallahassee. A big white building, windows glowing, voices inside. Past midnight, he slipped in, quiet, quick. The attacks were brutal. 2 women dead, others broken, bloodied, left in the dark. He left behind a trail of fear so deep the town never slept again. He fled, but the law closed in. He stole again, drove wild, ran through streets. Police caught him in a small stolen car. His face was pale, his smile forced. They knew who he was. The trial in Florida was a spectacle. Cameras filled the courtroom. Reporters crammed the seats. The world wanted a front row. Bundy walked in like it was his show. He wore suits. He spoke smooth. He questioned witnesses. He grinned at the jury. He proposed marriage to a woman in the gallery. He played to the cameras like they were friends. But the evidence lay heavy. Bite marks matched his teeth. Survivors pointed to him. The walls closed tight. The jury saw through the smile. The verdict was death. He nodded once when they read it. Then he looked at the judge as if still bargaining. The judge said, "Take care of yourself, young man. You're a bright young man. You'd have made a good lawyer. I would have loved to have had you practice in front of me. But you went another way, partner." Bundy's face broke then. A flicker, a shadow of fear.
In the years that followed, he lived in a cell. He spoke to writers. He gave interviews. He blamed pornography, blamed sickness, blamed anyone but himself. He drew women to his side, women who sent letters, gifts, prayers. They called him handsome. They said he was misunderstood. But the clock ticked. On the final night in 1989, the prison was quiet. Guards walked slow. Outside the gates, a crowd gathered. Some held candles. Some cheered for death. Some sang hymns. Inside, Bundy sat in a small room. He looked older, his hair thinner, his face lined. The charm was gone. He asked for a last meal. He said few words. When they came for him, he walked steady into the chamber. The chair sat in the middle, leather straps waiting. They bound his arms, his chest, his legs. They set the mask over his face. The air was still. At 7 in the morning, the switch was thrown. The current surged. His body stiffened, then slumped. It was over fast. Outside, the crowd roared. Some held signs. Some wept. Some cheered like it was a game won. The news broke quick. Ted Bundy executed. The face that once charmed classrooms, courtrooms, strangers on the street, gone. But the shadow remained. The women lost, the families broken, the fear that still carried his name. Bundy thought he was special, thought he was larger than the walls around him. In the end, he was only a man in a chair. The silence that followed was heavier than all his words.